Good afternoon, good morning. Wish you a very, very happy day whichever part of the country, the world we are in. नमस्कार मेरा नाम पुनीत विद्यार्थी है RMAI और मेरी अपनी तरफ से मैं आप सभी का बहुत बहुत स्वागत करता हूँ for this webinar show which in which I have two very, very eminent and learned speakers with us to talk about you know things and topics which are very relevant in today's time. Before I introduce my eminent guests, uh, just to set a context, since the topic is around agriculture and allied agriculture businesses, the importance of agriculture can never be overstated, at least in Indian context. Although the share of agriculture in India's GDP has been declining or stagnant over a couple of period, the volume and the size has gone up. But still, for Indian context, agriculture and allied sectors like forestry, fishing, agro processing, uh, they contribute close to 14% of India's GDP. Not to mention about the far-reaching impact and effect on the very backbone and the character of our country. The contribution of agriculture can never be underestimated. Uh, Close to 11% of our exports is through agriculture uh, produces. And in terms of livelihood, agriculture actually supports almost half of India's population. And besides being the source of raw material for a large number of industries. Uh, with this context, today's chat show we'll have around how agriculture and allied agriculture industries have evolved in India, and how has been the journey, and what are the learnings for us going forward, how we can extrapolate our learnings for the future for India and for all of ourselves. To introduce at this point of time, I'll have the pleasure of introducing the panelists. Uh, we have today Dr. Anup Kalra. Dr. Kalra is director at Ayurvet Limited, and he's a vice president of Rural Marketing Association of India, RMAI. Dr. Kalra has a experience of more than 2 decades in the domain of skilling, rural development, brand promotion, corporate communication. I think the list is very long, Dr. Kalra. Dr. Kalra is currently working on the sustainable integration of livestock and agriculture for improving farmers' income. He holds a master's degree in veterinary sciences from College of Science, ISAR, and a specialization in marketing towards creating value. A very good afternoon, Dr. Kalra, and a warm welcome from my side, sir.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah. I also have today with us Nandeesha KL. Nandeesha is a senior digital agronomist at Xarvio Digital Farming Solutions BASF Limited. Nandeesha has done his studies largely in Dharwad, his master's and undergrad and also PhD. He's a doctorate. He has got immense work experience as well as academic experience, and he is currently working on something very interesting, as his designation also suggests, senior digital agronomist. So I think he has got today probably very, very interesting perspective to our discussion. Uh, Nandisha believes that digital farming is the most challenging and upcoming area of agriculture in India, with a lot of scope to improvise the farming in India by giving need-based, accurate decision support to the farmers. Nandisha is working closely to promote digital apps and its benefits to farmers, students, and scientific community. Very, very good afternoon, Nandisha, and welcome from my side.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Uh, Taking it further, as I said, so agriculture is also the backbone of Indian economy. Employs close to 40% of population, The production of food grain has grown from 70 odd million tons in 1960-61 to 320 million tons in the fiscal of 2021. So we have definitely come a long way. The population growth obviously has been one of the key driver for agriculture products growth, and also the urbanization and rural India growth opportunities within rural India itself. So in the next 40-45 minutes, we will try and deliberate and discuss couple of points related to this aspects, and also try and see what breakthroughs have happened in the past couple of years and how we can extrapolate those learnings. So without wasting much time, I uh, I move to the first question with Dr. Kalra. Uh, Sir, as we were discussing earlier as well, we have come a long way in last decade,
Right.
and there has been a shift, in the Indian economy and the construct of Indian economy, specifically the rural economy, in terms of its size, shape, and role and relevance. So, how do you see this shift, sir?
Well, at the outset, Puneet, I would like to thank you for introducing me and also like to thank RMAI for extending this opportunity to me to share my views with the guests here. I think, before we go on to the subject, Puneet, I have an observation that, you know, agriculture, so, it is made out of two words. It used to be culture, and now this is agribusiness, right? So, when we discuss at any forum, whether at this forum or at the forum of PhD chamber or CII or ICFA, you know people talk about what is happening in agriculture. So at one end we call it as culture, and on the other hand we call it as business.
Right.
The possible question which you asked is, what is the shift? I would say this is the shift which is happening. We are moving away from culture to business. Like I remember, when I interact with the farmers, I would not go more into the numbers because the I'm sure the guests present here are learned enough, and the data is available on the record. So rather than sharing the data, I think what is important here is that initially there used to be in agriculture, there used to be a barter system or a sharing system of uh, learning or knowledge. We never used to sell the produce, whether it was milk, whether it was wheat, paddy, or anything. It used to be bartered. So if I produced in a particular village good quality milk, and someone wants that milk butter, I would share it with him, and in barter I could get any produce. So this continued, but over a period of time, the change which you see is that, and of course, the change was required because had we not worked on it, possibly the current white milk revolution in the area of milk or green revolution in terms of the crop production, we would not have been able to feed so much of mouths in India because our population is growing at a very large pace. So that kind of research, that kind of intervention, that kind of shift in the gear was required, and that is how I think that people or the scientists, now even the farmers, have started talking about the productivity per acre. That's number one. Point number two is, what is my income per acre or per hectare? So those kind of things, and how do I compare myself at the international level? Where am I? Where is China? It could be milk production. It could be production of the maize, paddy. What kind of seeds are they using? What kind of seeds am I using? Ultimately, if I have to spare an acre of land, what is that revenue which I get? Currently, also when you talk to the farmers, you would say, sir, 20 से 25,000 रुपया per acre मिल जाता है. Now that is not a big sum of amount, and we could say that the farmer is prospering. And that is the reason when you said, when you opened the subject, people have started moving away from agriculture. and there is a shift of the rural population moving towards the urban side. But then this is a big challenge, and as RMAI or as the corporates, we surely need to look at it, because if you see all the population moving away from the rural areas to urban, one, that influx is going to make a challenge in the urban cities. Second, who's going to produce? Because everyone wants to be the consumption center. So therefore, I think the farmer needs to be supported. The policies are there now. The government has started thinking towards it, supporting the farmers, and I think it is now high time that the real terms of agriculture to agribusiness needs to be looked at. And if we want to be the leader, we will have to see that the farmer gets money out of agriculture or livestock or fisheries. If not, it's going to be a big challenge. We would be dependent on the imports, which I think most of the developed countries want. So I think that is a point I would like to share, and I'm being very candid and open, because I support the farmers. That wherever they are, and developed countries want their intervention, because they say India is a very, very big market, because we have a huge population. So I think it is time that we educate, train, and help the farmer in sustainable farming, where he is able to earn money, and only then he would continue to be part of this agriculture or agribusiness.
I think very, very interesting point, Dr. Kalra, and it has been a very common cliche when we used to say कि भाई हमारे देश में कल्चर नहीं है, एग्रीकल्चर है, and the perspective which
बिल्कुल.
you gave कि हम कल्चर से एग्रीकल्चर से हम एग्री बिजनेस की तरफ जा रहे हैं. I think it's a real paradigm shift.
Yes.
And when there is a paradigm shift, I'm sure there are a lot of definitions change. I mean, the way we look at the whole ecosystem, that change. So at this point, Dr. Nandeesha, my question is to you. How do you see how do we define a rural market now, and how it used to be defined maybe 10 years back? Because the series is decade of change, so let's probably take a time span of 10, 12, 15 years. We have all read the same books about rural marketing, and Pradeep Kashyap ji ka books and all that. So there has been a definition which was given 10, 15 years back. Let's quickly revisit probably and understand what do we understand from rural markets today. Dr. Nandeesha.
Yeah, a very nice question, sir, to tell, and it's to explain how the Dr. Karla was explaining, agriculture is moving, or agriculture is shifting to business point of view. Earlier it is a culture, and now it is shifting to business point. Likewise, when we see now today, to tell it straight away in one word, we have gone so far away from when compared to 10, 15 years back, like around in 2005 or 2010. And in today 2020, we are talking more on we are more enhanced in agriculture marketing, both in rural areas or it may be in urban areas. So what made this change was invent of smartphones and Internet of Things. When we look at previous very few years back, in India, Jio was launched so that people can have access to Internet. They could have browse all the whatever the things required. They were browsing, but earlier when way back around in 10, 15 years, so we don't have these kind of things in Indian agriculture or Indian market. And slowly moving on, there was a drastic shift in agriculture, where we were started using farm machineries. Farm machineries were started using, and we can see in rural areas itself, many of the manufacturing units have been started. Slowly, they have started manufacturing the agriculture equipments or agriculture tools, so that the farmers can procure or buy and get their things from there in the rural areas itself, thereby increasing the rural economy. And we can also see the development of over the years, we can see the development of cooperative societies or the development of the various banks, which has increased the socio-economic conditions of farmers. Most of the banks have supported the farmers financially. The rural background has generated the income to invest in agriculture. They have invested in various sectors, like we can see most of the agro industries. agriculture-based industries are heading towards the rural areas where they used to process the food. We see now, you can see the hard food is the food preference of the people has also been shifted. Okay, when we look at the way back around in 2005 or 2010, the food preference of the people was different, and the food habit and the food preference of the people in the current situation is different. So there is a lot of scope for value addition of the agriculture products. The food grains that we grown were not sown directly as is to the consumers. Now we are going for a value addition of the food products. So where earlier we didn't add that kind of value addition and the nutrition concept, and now we can also see the various agro input companies are looking towards the rural areas for business generation, where they get a lot of business out in the rural areas. So but of course, we can discuss that earlier also there were some of the industries, but the quantum of and the number of industries in way back around 2005 and 10 were relatively less when compared to the present scenario, that is 2020, where we are talking, and we've seen the tremendous changes in Indian agriculture in terms of production, productivity, in terms of the quality of the produce that we are producing because of using of all the advanced agriculture technologies, and uh, combined harvesters has come up not to get clean food grains and so on. With these things, there is a lot of change in agriculture rural marketing when compared to 2010.
I think you raised very interesting points, and specifically you talked about the enablers which have because of which the market has shifted. And Dr. Kalra, Dr. Nandeesha has raised. I mean, he mentioned a very interesting point about the food preferences have changed, and therefore the value proposition the marketeers or the producers can offer in the rural markets will have a completely different shade. So, I mean, that's a very interesting point, because I was thinking, if the beliefs and habits and preferences in rural market are changing, uh, so in that scenario, what do you see? How we can define the evolution of rural markets with respect to the priorities and the growth drivers, some of which Dr. Nandeesha had spoken about, but on the softer side, because you had been in the thick and thin of the action. So on the softer side, how do you see the evolution happening in rural markets specifically?
No, I think what Dr. Nandeeshan said is very meaningful. If you what when we started with RMAI and what we used to talk about rural markets, कि rural हाट होते हैं, rural हाट में products मिलते हैं and all that. But अगर तब और अब में आप देखेंगे तो जमीन आसमान का फर्क है. So, at that point of time, there was no mechanization. Now you have mechanization. There was no, there was 100% element of cash. Now there is an element of digitization. That time, the element of service was very limited. Agronomist had very limited role. Now the role of agronomist have gone up substantially. The government scheme on, what you call this Aadhaar, not Aadhaar. This is what you call those soil health cards. So checking the quality of the soil, and therefore what kind of crop you need to grow, and if the soil quality is not good, then you shouldn't be growing. So there is a lot of shift which has happened to the right, that the farmer is more educated, the industry is ready to support, the government is also ready to support with number of scheme, infrastructure funds, and I think, if I have to say, I would say the entire rural ecosystem has evolved significantly over a period of last decade, and this is still in process. I would not say that it has come to a particular plateau, but this is still in process, and lot needs to be done. I think over a period of time, Puneet, if you ask me, uh, I don't think there's going to be any rural left. Say another 5 years or 10 years. Possibly it may be urban and peri-urban. So, and also, on one side, there is wheat and paddy production. So you go to Haryana, you go to Punjab, you go to Western UP, you'll have paddy, rice, maybe sugar cane. Now, on the other side, there is an integrated approach now in the rural markets. Now, when I say integrated, these are also production and processing markets. These are, say, India, we are the number one milk producer in the world. So you will have people now who are managing the dairy farms and also the agriculture farms. So, and you have those hearts in the villages. I don't say those hearts are not there, but they have been transformed to a great extent. I don't know how do I express. The government has got those FPOs now, farmer producer organizations. So it is a congregation of number of farmers. They could be 200 to 400 or 1,000 farmers. They come together, so they have the buying capability. So they buy together. Whatever they produce, good quality produce, is marketed by them, whether it is required by a private player or by a government player. So I think there is a shift towards, from the hearts to the FPOs. So there is a group of farmers now doing it. Yes, those heart exist. Marginal farmers do visit for their daily needs, not necessarily agriculture and all that, but other daily needs. But I think there is a shift in the rural markets. So you will have the preferences in the rural areas. आप आज कहीं पे भी पुनीत आप जाके देंगे कि छोटे से छोटे गांव में आपको बर्गर मिलेगा. बर्गर हिंदी में लिखा हो या इंग्लिश में लिखा हो, स्पेलिंग बिल्कुल गलत होगी. लेकिन you look at the guy, boy or a girl or a youth staying in a village, his aspiration. He also wants to enjoy the same burger which you and me or our children enjoy here. So that may not be McDonald's, but उसको भी होता है कि मुझे पिज्ज़ा और बर्गर खाना है. उसे भी ये होता है कि मुझे अंडा खाना है. उसे भी ये होता है कि मुझे चिकन खाना है. So those preferences are important, and they're going towards the high consumption of the what should I say, the milk and the meat diets. So it is not only the vegetarian diet which is important in the villages, but there is surely a shift towards the inclusion of chicken in the diet, inclusion of eggs in the diet. One way it is good that it is helping in improving the rural health and the protein sufficiency. Uh, but I think now agriculture doesn't mean only paddy, wheat, and maize, but it also means livestock. It also means horticulture. It also means fisheries. So there is more of an integrated approach now in the rural areas or the rural markets. That's what I would say.
Sure. So, Dr. Kalra, if I link uh, the perspective which you had given, which is talking about integrated, ecosystem, where production and processing is part of it, and I'll probably extend it to also production, processing, and consumption. All are
Absolutely.
going together now. And consumption, why? Because as you mentioned in the examples of eggs or chicken or dietary habits or burger or pizza or chips and cold drinks. So certainly most of the companies have started catering to these markets, whether those are big organizations or small organizations, and there is an audience which is consuming and has got an appetite to consume some of these things. So I go back to 10 years back, when in our organization, or 15 years back in our organization, when we started talking about rural. तो पहला तो बॉटलनेक इंटरनल होता था कि रूरल होता क्या है. तो हम
Okay.
समझाते थे भाई, एक रूरल एक ऐसा मार्केट प्लेस है जो wherein the consumer doesn't want to be seen as the deprived cousin of his urban counterpart, and hence he has got aspirations and all that. And that is where I take a leaf from what Dr. Nandeesha said about the digital influx in the whole system, which has suddenly enabled access, same access for everybody. And I was having a discussion earlier today with Dr. Nandeesha. Typically the edtech uh, platforms. I mean, the same education content is available across the nation, irrespective of which area you are
Right.
in. Or
Right.
maybe e-commerce delivery platforms. The entertainment, for example, the fintech. द ड्रीम 11 पे आप टीम चाहे आप बॉम्बे में बैठे हो या फार ईस्ट पे किसी विलेज में बैठे हो, you have the same chances of contributing to those advancements. So that brings me to a question which is my dilemma also today. Is there any divide now left between urban market and rural market? Your take, Dr. Kalra, on this. And if there is any, where are the parting lines? I mean, where do you say,
I think
as you said, urban
this
and
is very
maybe.
this is very tricky. Puneet, if you ask me, there is a physical divide. If you ask me, there is still a physical divide. And I'll try and explain you what I mean by physical divide. Rural is still the production and the consumption center. So they also produce, they also consume. Okay, but most of their consumption which happens is getting processed in the urban areas by the corporates and not necessarily in the rural areas. Okay, though the government has a lot of schemes under the Ministry of Food Processing, the food processing sector is also growing, and there is they are offering a lot of employment to the rural youth. All that is good, positive, but if you still go to a village, which I'm sure you would be visiting, and Dr. Nandeesha, being an agronomist, should also be visiting the villages, the kind of infrastructure which definitely has improved what it used to be there in a decade, but aaj bhi hygiene is a challenge. You don't have good schools in the rural areas. Uh, what do you call the toilets, under CSR, we have constructed a number of toilets. Government has done a lot of work here under the Swachh Bharat mission, but still if you go to a village, there are challenges of the schooling, infrastructure, roads. In some places, yes, the good quality roads are available, good quality schools are available, but I think it is still a long way and lot needs to be done, which is what I think the corporates and the government need to come together. There may be 6 lakh villages, for example, or maybe little more, and let the government identify each corporate. You say you take this village belongs to you. Okay, the government and the corporates work together, develop the infrastructure as it is the corporates are doing CSR.
Yeah.
So let them work together. So there is a physical divide in terms of the infrastructure. But in terms of aspiration, I would say no. So the aspiration of the rural youth are the same, because he may not have the college facility in the village, but he would travel say 10 kilometers to attend college in the district headquarters, or whatever is the nearby place, where he would like to use the same smartphone, the same branded clothes. It could be Nike or Adidas shoes or whatever, and which is what you observe. When you interact with them, वो कहा है हम किसी से कम नहीं. तो
Yeah.
इसका मतलब ये थोड़ी कि मैं गांव में रहता हूं तो मैं किसी से कम हूं. So he would showcase all those things, and he would want to come to the urban area rather than sitting in the rural area. आज भी मुझे नहीं पता है कि राज जी जुड़े हैं कि नहीं इस सेशन में. जा साहब, he is an expert in this area, and आज भी गांव में अगर आप किसी को पुनीत ये कहते हैं ना कि मेरा बेटा खेती करता है, so it is not still considered and a prestigious thing. I
Fashionable.
consider, yeah, it's not in. So I यार अगर किसान नहीं रहेगा तो आप और हम खाएंगे क्या?
Correct, sir.
तो किसान होना, किसान का बेटा होना एक बहुत बड़ी बात है, लेकिन गांव में अगर आप बता दो तो बोला नहीं नहीं, मेरे बेटे की शादी यहाँ नहीं हो सकती है, आज भी वो चीज़ है। तो हमें लगता है कि, मुझे ये लगता है कि हमें अपने गांव को, अपने किसान को उस लेवल पे और आज हमें इम्प्रूव करने की ज़रूरत है। इसलिए मैं कह रहा हूँ कि फिजिकल डिवाइड आज भी है, जिसको हमें आने वाले समय में चेंज करने की आवश्यकता है।
I think it's a very, very apt thing, and you had brought a very interesting concept, and I have not thought, in that direction. A physical divide versus digital divide.
The
While we had
aspirational.
traveled a lot of distance on the digital divide, parting the digital divide, probably the physical divide is still there. So my question to Dr. Nandeesha at this point, uh, we have seen a big transition. It may not be sufficient, but it's a big transition in the last 10, 15 years with respect to aspiration or covering the digital divide, or some work has been done on the basic hygiene, schooling, roads, infrastructure, health, etc., etc. But if I have to extrapolate, whatever transition has happened in last couple of years, and if I ask you, how do you see the rural markets maybe 10 years down the line, specifically when we say, as Dr. Kalra said, that there may not be any rural environment left. It could be an urban and very urban at some point of time, and hence there are things happening in that. But I mean, just a crystal ball gazing, how do you see rural markets in 2020, 2030? Uh, and you may probably link it with the agri and agri produce, as Dr. Kalra also mentioned one very interesting thing. कि प्रोडक्शन गांव में हो रहा है, उसका प्रोसेसिंग अर्बन सेंटर में हो रहा है, बट कंजम्पशन रूरल में हो रहा है. So there is a lot of I don't know whether I can call it a wastage, but yes, there is probably some scope for growth. So do you see anything happening? Yes,
I'll
of course.
just make a small point before Dr. Nandeesha comes in. You know, see, agriculture is not only about productivity; it's also about sustainability.
Correct,
You
sir.
know, if you look at that, if you don't have the production and the processing center in the villages, which the government wants, what would happen is the number of carbon miles are going to get increased. अब डीजल वैसे ही महंगा हो रहा है, तो आपने डीजल में अपना माल भरा और बोला कहाँ जा रहा है, बोला साहब वो प्रोसेसिंग सेंटर में जा रहा है. So if you have the grading and the processing center near in the peri-urban areas, possibly the farmers would get employment there. They would have the skilling centers there, and of course from there it can go to those urban areas. So some
Yeah,
of those good initiatives have already started, but I think
yeah.
still a long way to go.
Still a long way to
Sorry,
go.
I just wanted
Absolutely.
to
Yeah,
make a point.
absolutely, absolutely relevant. Actually, you made my task easier. I mean, so Dr. Manisha, how do you see, with respect to agri-produce and maybe allied agri-industry, to be behaving in next 10 years to probably bridge that infra-physical divide as well?
Yes, sir. As Dr. Carla said, clearly pointed out, what is the rural will not be the rural after 10 more years. It's almost equivalent to urbans or semi-urbans, right? When we look way forward after 10 years, right now itself, we can see there is a drastic development in the rural areas, especially in the rural population, are talking towards the farmers in the rural areas. Now they are acquainted of using Internet of Things, and they're acquainted or adapted to the e-commerce. Where earlier they used to do the transaction, if they wanted to buy something else, they must have to go to the urban areas, nearby cities or towns. They had to go. But right now the scenario is not same. Just to quote an example, though, in the e-commerce we are having Flipkart or Amazon, Mintra or whatnot. There are so many e-commerce applications now. They just access to them, they'll, because of the age of internet and because of the literacy rate now, when compared to early days, now the literacy rate has been increased, and now the farming is not the same. The only one who is illiterate will do the farming. No, it's not at all the same. The many of the degree holding graduates are looking towards the farming, because farming is the one which is having the booming sector in India and the worldwide. So not going away from the topic. That's what in way looking forward way towards the 2030, rurals will not be the same rurals, because the purchasing capacity of the farmers has been increased due to this e-commerce. They can sit and buy anything at any place. If just they look into this, use the tab, just select the product whichever they wanted to select, and just order. It's as easy, and they can that will be on their doorstep. One thing, and to see, and one more thing is more than 25 to 40% of the more than 90% of the Indian population will be in the age group between 25 to 40 when in 2030. That means most of the population will be young. That means the younger generation. The younger generation are literate. So there will be no much gap between the rural and urban areas because the civilization has moved on and the infrastructure has been developed a lot, and it is nevertheless equal to an rural now. We cannot tell for rural means we cannot imagine that how it was in the earlier days. No hygienics, no shelter, no bus stand, no infrastructure, whatnot. And earlier days, as I remember during 2005 or 4 around, we used to bring the petrol in the bottles. Now we can from the city somebody will be borrowing, and from that shop we used to get it. But now it's not the same scenario. There are 3 to 4 petrol pumps in individual village. That means the things have moved on. And coming to e-commerce in agriculture industry, now the people are getting all the agriculture inputs in their own rural areas. There are various agriculture input providing companies. Like to quote an examples like Agriflex is there, Udan is there, Apicat, and these are the companies. They are working to the mobile applications as well. If the farmers select the various products for his crop, which are relevant to his crop, which the problems he is facing, then if they order over the phone to these technologies, using this phone or by using this Internet of Things, if they order, this all those things will be in the doorstep. And we can also see the tremendous infrastructural development in rural areas as well. We can see the institutional development for education purposes. We can see lots of education institutes coming up in rural areas itself. No need to think that no, we should send our children to somewhere else, a far away place for education. Yes, there is some gap, but it's not as uh, that gap as earlier. Now it has moved on, and we can also see that some big differences in pharmaceutical industries as well. Because earlier, for some small health upsets, also we need to travel a lot to reach to the doctors. But the condition is not same now. Now we are having many of the specialty hospitals in the rural areas itself, so that the infrastructure has been developed, and we can also see the for storing the warehouse facility. If we talk to the storing of the food grain, storage of the food produce, earlier they used to go for the nearby urban areas to store their food grains in a warehouse. The produce is more or bulk, they used to store in the cold storage. But now some of the storage centers have been moved up to the rural areas, and there are a lot many warehouse facilities. So from the central government schemes, central warehouse agencies. There are a lot many warehouses there in the rural areas itself where they can store their grains. Likewise, there is no much difference. And coming to education also, we in the last few years we have seen that we could not able to go to schools because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and everyone has to access to the education over phone by using the internet, by using the various meeting apps like Zoom or meeting Google Meet or Teams call, what's not. And it is same for a person who is sitting in the rural area, and it's the same for the person who is sitting in the urban areas. So there is not that much big gap between the rural and urban. And going forward in the 2030, we cannot see that much big gap between the rural and the urban areas. Almost everything is the same line because everybody has educated well when compared to the previous generations. The coming generations are very much well educated. Nobody is willing to go against the education. Nobody is not interested in education. Like everyone are wanted to study, wanted to have their higher education. So when some of the reports also says that by 2030 the Indian population will be more of young age people between age group of 25 to 40. So by considering all these facts, I think that there is no big gap between the rural and the urban areas. It's almost a straight line, to tell it straightforward. It's almost in the same page. No much gaps or differences we can see between the rural and the urban areas.
Yeah, I think, and that is what looks like the way we are proceeding. I think that appears to be a very very logical state to be in. Dr. Kalra, I think Dr. Nandeesha has pointed out a very interesting thing, and you had also mentioned in the previous, this thing, uh, when you we were sharing the perspective about कि किसान के बेटे की यहाँ शादी अभी भी नहीं होती, or it's not cool to be a farmer. I mean, if I may use that word, or
Farmers.
son of a farmer. But what Dr. Nandesha has pointed out is the proportion of younger generation in the whole ecosystem, specifically, say, let's say, not so urban ecosystem. uh, and at some point of time, that younger generation needs an employment, or source of income, basically. uh, do you think, and at least I think, that the while agriculture may not, or may not be the main occupation, but allied agriculture industry is definitely set to grow. And as you also mentioned briefly, the employment around the rural areas, and that is where government is also working at, to bring in policies, or rather to bring in the processing plants near to the farm to fork, probably, kind of thing. So if that has to happen, which means if I combine agriculture and allied agriculture as one unit, can we say that there'll be a larger population engaged in agri plus allied agri? And if that is so, which specific one or two sectors, if you would like to mention, may emerge as the significant uh, allied agri sectors, which will contribute to the overall economy?
I think it's very important. See, I'll tell you, if you look at the agriculture growth over the year, so at times you would find that the growth has been negative, the growth has been 1%, 1.5%, 2%. The real growth, when you say that it is contributing to GDP by 30% or 40%, it is majorly getting supported by the livestock and the fishery industry, and also supported, very well supported by the horticulture. So these are, I think, three important sectors. You know, and the other one which is gradually coming up, which Honorable Prime Minister had also mentioned in his Man Ki Baat twice, that the cultivation of the medicinal plants, that to bring those medicine plants into and put them on the scientific what should I say, at par with the allopathy, that you cultivate the farmers to cultivate the medicine plants, and they should be tested on the scientific parameters, and then they should be made available globally. So I think these four or five sectors, I think, surely would complement to agriculture. And if you see now in say in and around Delhi, in and around all the metros, the milk, A2 milk, if you have heard about it, A2 milk
Yes.
or indigenous cow milk is selling at around 80 to 100 rupees a liter. I know a lot of farmers, a lot of youths, to whom we have imparted training, and they are all engineering graduates, all studied abroad, working abroad. They said, and they have come back to India. That now we want to go into farming, livestock farming. So they are now doing. They have got 50 cows, 100 cows, 200 cows, number of them, and doing a good business out of the indigenous cow. Horticulture is another important. Fisheries is also a growing sector. Of course, for fisheries, you would be surprised. Rajasthan is doing very well in fisheries. We call it as desert, but it is doing very well. Haryana is doing very well. It's not only you need to have a coastal belt to do fisheries. So Haryana is doing very well. Rajasthan is doing very well, and these sectors, apart from wheat and rice, definitely are going to contribute towards the protein sufficiency and overall health of the nation. And that is why this kind of sustainable farming or an integrated farming, what you may call, is catching up very fast. Government has set up certain programs. For example, of late there is a term known as Parampragat Krishi Yojana. Now, what the government has said about Paramparagat is the traditional way of farming. It says that traditionally we used to keep cows, and the cow dung was used for producing the compost, which used to enrich the soil, and therefore you used to get good quality food, because
Yeah.
carbon in the soil is very important, which it is not available. The soils are depleted of the carbon, and it can come only through the cow dung. That is one of the major sources. So, which is what government is now trying to propagate, that you do agriculture, you do livestock farming, you do horticulture, and they have devised certain strategies. I think in an integrated way, over a period of time, things definitely should improve. Though you would see the rural migration to the urban areas, but I think this divide over a period of time will be minimized.
Will be minimized. I think a very, very
बट आज
interesting. Yeah.
आज भी आप पुनीत, मतलब देखो, हम बात तो कर रहे हैं कि मतलब इम्प्रूवमेंट हुआ है, लेकिन आप अपने घर में अपने बेटे को कहो कि जाके गांव में रहो, his answer will be, नहीं नहीं पापा, I can't stay there, because he's used to an urban lifestyle here. He has seen those roads, he's seen those malls. So it would take some time, but I think another 10 years, 15 years, things would change a lot, and
You're
it is
right, sir.
going to be
See,
becoming.
that habits will. I mean, though it's not a trend, but you can. We just read a news article in some organization asked people to come back to offices, and there was a mass resignation happened. In another news, the chief design engineer put in his paper because he was happy working from home. So somewhere and working from home back in the village, not working from home in the city
Yeah.
point. So I mean, these are not the representative examples, but yes, I mean, somewhere somebody is thinking that if given a point, all those things are available near me, and if I can have a better life, quality of life, even the earning is secured or through alternate means, I think it looks like uh, people will have a different behavior and choices. Uh, and thanks for raising and mentioning, sir, the upcoming allied agri livestock fisheries. I was not aware that Haryana and Rajasthan are doing well or
Yeah, they're doing
growing.
very well, very well.
It's a very, very interesting horticulture. Yes, medicine plants. It looks to be it's a new thing. Uh, at this point of time, I also request our audience to start posting the questions. We have another 10-12 minutes to chat, and we'll be happy to take any questions should you have. So please feel free and questions or comments, and we'll try and incorporate should the time permit. Dr.
One
Kalra,
more point.
yes, sir.
Yes, right. I just wanted to make one point before you go to another question.
Yes, sir.
Is uh, you know if you need fresh air today, you have to be in the rural areas. आपको गांव में नहीं मिलेगी, गांव में ही फ्रेश एयर आपको मिलेगी, हरियाली वहीं पे ही है. शहर में आपको गर्मी मिलेगी और आपको फ्रेश एयर नहीं मिलेगी. लेकिन
आपको
जो
लाइट
गांव
भी
में
मिलेगी.
रहता है वो वैल्यू नहीं समझता है. वो कहता है कि नहीं, मुझे शहर में जाना है. एक तो ये पैराडॉक्स है. दूसरी चीज, अगर हमें अपने एग्रीकल्चर को, अपने लाइफ स्टॉक सेक्टर को, अपने हॉर्टिकल्चर सेक्टर को और इम्प्रूव करना है, बिकॉज वी हैव टू बी production center not only for our country. I look at that it has to be a hub, making supplies to not only the Southeast Asian countries but also to the globe. So we have people, we have youth, we have land. What is important is that what do I do to improve my productivity? Very, very important. Whether it is mill productivity, whether it is crop productivity, or anything, what do I do? what quality measures do I take so that I am able to compete at the international level. So, having said all that, and the third important point is the operations have to be over a period of time more sustainable. When I say more sustainable means less usage of the resources. It could be, maybe we could use solar or something like that, because otherwise agriculture may not be very profitable to the farmer. As it is, if there is a challenge, but the government is helping, the farmer is educated now, but some changes are required where quality is going to be the center stage of everything, if we have to be a production hub for the developed world as well.
I think, sir, आपने so since you have touched upon this point, and this is something also I was also thinking of asking. Of late, we have seen there has been an acceptance for Indian products in the overseas market, uh, and this has been seen in almost every sector, and not specifically in manufacturing or healthcare or anything. We had been, now since we are self-sufficient or more or less self-sufficient on the food production side. Uh, of late, we have seen that there has been a great spurt or focus in terms of exporting the food grains, and there are more and more markets which are getting favorable with respect to Indian produce. And you raise the right point of productivity and the quality. Um can we slightly expand a bit more, and we can take an example of any allied agri industry or agri processing industry, or any case study or any example which comes to your mind, uh, something which have
I think
crossed that boundary.
uh, there are a number of such cases. I think uh, where say there is a farm in Haryana known as Binsar Farm. I don't know if
Ji.
you've heard about that
Yeah,
farm,
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
just could Google it, Binsar Farm. So the all the directors of the company or the co-founders of the company are all fintech people or all engineers, and they started on a small way, and they're doing now wonders. And they sell their quality milk, and they are now using an app, to reach to the consumers and sell the quality milk. So similarly, there are number of such examples. Number of there is another organization by the name Argos, ERGOS. Okay, what they've been doing is, they help the farmers to convert their grains into the tradable assets. आपने धान या गेहूं जो भी प्रोड्यूस किया, so they would buy it and convert it into tradable assets, and then you can trade it wherever and whenever you want. So you're not trading the rice and paddy or maize. You are It is an asset with you. You trade it with Ergos or anyone else. So there are some good examples. There is another Indigo AG which is providing, maybe Dr. Nandeesha would be aware about it. They are providing integrated service, right from what you call agronomy, contract farming, storage, marketing. So a lot of such services are available in the market. But if you compare, for example, livestock in India, we have indigenous breeds, we have exotic breeds, mixed breeds, but the average productivity in India is say 2 to 3 liters per cow per day. Whereas if you look at the global standards, it would be very high. On an average, it would be 25-30 liters per day. So therefore, we need to see what are those techniques, what are those processes which we need to follow. So if we are able to do that, I'm saying even if we take from 2.5 to 5 liters, it's going to be a big jump. Productivity in terms of rice, productivity in terms of maize, we are far behind than where China is.
Yeah.
So some of those things, I am not a great expert in this sector, agri sector, but these are some of the thoughts that which we need to look at. Now there is a debate going on, People say that if you don't use the chemical fertilizer, how will you feed the country? On the other hand, there are group of people who say no, no, don't use all those, they are poisonous. But I am saying what is important here for all of us is to use to take a common path of an integrated approach, of a balanced approach, where we use the chemicals in the right quantity which is required, mixed with whatever organic fertilizer which needs to be given. Ultimately, we need to feed our nation. That is
Sure.
important. But globally, if we want to become a global player in livestock, because our percentage of exports, whether it is agri or it is livestock, is minimal. And if you have European countries, they export because their population is less, and they export say 70%, 80% is produced, so their GDP is much better. So we are a consuming economy. So
We are a
दूध
consumer
तो हम
economy.
खुद ही पहुंचाते हैं सारा. So therefore, I think the point which I was trying to share here was that quality and productivity are important, and link that with sustainability. These three
Absolutely.
things I think are very very important if we want to become a global player. And the farmer should get that kind of respect. वी शुड स्टैंड बाय कि अरे मैं किसान हूँ, मैं भारत के लिए अनाज पैदा करता हूँ. बट दैट प्राइड हैज टू वी हैव टू ऑल वर्क टुगेदर टू मेक हिम फील प्राउड अबाउट, बिकॉज ही इज द वन हु इज. आज अगर आई एम जस्ट टेकिंग अ मिनट मोर, एंड
Sure,
आई
sure.
टोल्ड दिस टू द ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर एज वेल. ही सेड, मैंने कहा सर सुबह उठ के अगर आपको चाय नहीं मिलेगी, तो बोला नहीं नहीं ऐसे क्यों. मैंने कहा सर उसका इंग्रेडिएंट तो दूध है. तो अगर आप जो है लाइफ स्टॉक के ऊपर ध्यान नहीं देंगे, और तो प्रोडक्टिविटी आपको कहाँ से मिलेगी, दूध आपको मिलेगा नहीं. तो बोले नहीं नहीं लाइफ स्टॉक तो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. So they
Sure,
realize,
sure.
and that is why the government has now set up a separate ministry for the livestock. Earlier it was part of agriculture, so there is a separate ministry. So government is doing its bit, but I think it's a long way. We all need to work together, including the government and the corporates, to make the farmer, Indian farmer, proud of what he is doing to all of us and for our nation.
Sure. Actually, sir, you raised a very interesting and important point about the quality and the productivity. And Dr. Nandeesha has got a case study to share with us about the farm management services, how
Oh,
digital
I
can
did.
be interestingly contributing, and specifically in the last pandemic days, these things have become more prominent. So, Dr. Nandisha, over to you. And looking at the example which you have to share, I think you have got a couple of slides and we have got a couple of minutes. So, why don't you take us through the uh, through your side of narrative, what you have?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Okay, sir. Till now we were discussing on how the agriculture was changed and agriculture was shifted to business, and how the agriculture perspective is changing in rural and urban areas. Now, one more thing is digitalization. Now, everyone is speaking on more on digitalization of agriculture or digital farming. Just before going to the main area, what in the COVID-19 pandemic, as everyone know, we could not come out of our homes, and farmers could not able to get the exact solution to the solution to their problems, and the people could not sell their products, could not even buy the products what they wanted. At that time, what has helped is this digital technology, this digitalization, there is Internet of Things. This is the thing that helped the population, entire India and across the world. To quote on some of the examples related to agriculture industry, in the COVID-19 pandemic, but everything was stopped, but not the agriculture, right? If agriculture for grain production was stopped, then entire thing would have been closed. Every field, every sector, every industry has been locked out for more than 6 months or a year to year, up to an year, but not agriculture. Agriculture has not stopped for a single day. So what the farmers did in this particular time was they could not reach out the scientists, or they could not reach out the resource persons. But at that time, they used this digital technologies like and the social media apps. That is, there are so many digital apps coming from various industries, various agro uh, chemical industries, and what they did was they just took the snap of that problems that they are facing. Like say, for example, if the disease infected leaves or the pest infected photographs that they shared with the resource person who is sitting somewhere else. Then they could able to diagnose through the photographs, and they could send the solution to the backend users, that the farmers. This is how the digitalization has improved the farming status in India and across the world. And the other way is we all know there was a tremendous change in the banking sector as well. There was a digitalization. There was cashless transactions during the COVID times. We saw the big queue standing in front of the ATMs or standing in front of the banks. But uh, moving off from digitalization, by using these apps like PhonePe or GPay or Paytm, the cashless transaction were begun, so that there was no relying on we need to go to bank or nothing. This digital has moved on. The digital technologies have driven from a traditional way of transactions as well, and the government has also started giving the benefits, direct transfer to the beneficiary. Earlier, they used to send to the some organization. Then that organization should go to the farmers, and they should get the money from them. And there was a loopholes in that process where the end users were not getting the benefit out of that. So then the government has come up with a direct beneficiary transfer scheme, where we can quote an example, PM Kisan, where they give almost 4,000 to farmers. Likewise, they give that amount in three terms. Like almost the farmers will be getting around 8 to 12,000. The smallholders will be getting that amount will be directly transferred to the beneficiary account. And we can see the coming development of the farmers producers organization, where the farmers produces their products, their food grains or milk or whatever it is. They produce it. They go for an organization. They sell through that organization, and these organizations have the tie-up with the some of the agriculture input companies like agri-tech or Udon or Big Ad. Through this, they marketize their produce. And Karnataka government, to quote an example, Karnataka government has launched an e-marketing, that is e-nams, so that the farmers can get the knowledge on the marketing area. What is the produce that we have to produce? What is the cost of our produce? What is the demand in the market? Where the price fluctuations are there? These things farmers get to know across the India. They can sit at their back end in their home by using these kind of technologies, Internet of Things, and through the digital app. They can get the exact price for their produce, so that they can sell at the whichever the market they want. Likewise, this digitalization has took the Indian agriculture way forward from the traditional agriculture, and even the rural people have also adapted to that because of using these digital apps in the COVID times. They get acquainted to that. They get acquainted. They got used to that, and frequently started using these digital technologies in the agriculture. This is how digital tools has adopted in the Indian farm. And talking towards the change in digitalization, the various companies are investing a lot of money in the digital area. And as everyone knows, the digital agriculture will rule the Indian market in the coming days, because there we can see the number of farm laborers are reducing, because everyone wants to work. Everyone are educated, and everyone are working in an ITBT area. So the Indian agriculture means the farmers are facing the scarcity of the labors. So in order to overcome this problem, many of the companies are working more on agriculture robotics that can work as a substitute to the farm labor. The algorithms are set in the robots, and they can take care of the farm operations. The team, please, you can present the slides so that I can explain bloom of digital technologies. Like other companies, BASF also, by considering the present Indian scenario of Indian agriculture, BASF wanted to introduce some of the digital apps in India, also in India and the world. One of the important apps introduced by xarvio digital farming solution is xarvio Scouting. This is the assistant in your pocket. This mobile application, this simple mobile application, works completely based on artificial intelligence, and it can able to identify various kinds of weeds, disease damage, leaf damage, and the pest infection areas in various crops. Just what the farmer need to do is they just wanted to take the photograph of the damage symptoms. Then if the process, the leaf damage will be analyzed by the decision making tool, and the information will be given to the farmers. Along with this, we are also having the nitrogen uptake emergency, nitrogen uptake status analysis. That is the amount of the nitrogen fertilizer that will be applied to the soil, how much quantity is being uptaken by the plant. That can also be seen using this nitrogen status analyzer. Then we can see the pest monitoring. As everyone knows that yellow sticky traps are the one of the component in integrated pest management. Here, this yellow trap analysis will enable the farmers to count the number of pests in an is field. How many pests are there in the field, and what are the different kinds of pests are there in this field? That can be analyzed by this kind of yellow sticky trap analysis. And we can also see the crop emergence. Yes, everyone sows the crop and come back, but how much the in a square meter area, how much the seeds are sown, how much the crops are emerged out, that can be calculated by using this crop emergence analysis in the scouting app. Along with the scouting app, we are also having the WhatsApp chatbot. Here, similar way of chatting in the WhatsApp. If you send the photographs into that WhatsApp number, it will ask the crop and it will give the valuable suggestion. Now we are also working on automatic detection of the crops. Just if you send the photo will be analyzed automatically, and the disease will be disease information will be given to the farmers. Next slide, please. Team, please take to the next slide. Yeah, this is what I said. If a farmers take the snap and send to the the image will be analyzed, and we will be giving that damage symptom with the confirmation image. See, in the front, the upper side one are the photos sent by the farmers, and the photos which are in the lower end, below sides, are the confirmation image given by the app with the exact causal organism involved in causing the disease. This information will be given to the farmers, and they can store this information for over the period in their app, so that in the next season they can forecast the appearance of the disease and the favorable conditions. So it will forearm the farmers. It will forecast the upcoming diseases and pests based on the present environmental conditions, so that the farmers can take up the early precaution measures to prevent the occurrence of the disease. Go to the next slide, please. And one more digital application from BASF, that is xarvio Field Manager. This is simply smart farming. That is, it will take care of all the activities from seeding to harvest. It will give the amount of the seeds will be sown, and what is the nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus fertilizer need to be applied. What is the dosage of application? What is the stage to apply the fertilizer and nutrients, and the timing of irrigation. What is the irrigation stress? What is the water stress the farmer field is in and there, when to give the irrigation, what is the time gap between the one irrigation and the second irrigation, and it is for crop protection. As crops are susceptible to various pests and diseases, we need to go for crop protection activities, and this will schedule by using this app. We can get the spray timer, when to spray, against which disease to spray, and what are all the products that are efficient against this disease. This kind of information will be given by xarvio Field Manager app, and we can have the good quality of harvest by using this kind of. Thank you. Please close the slides.
I think very nice illustration, Dr. Sab. Very interesting. And that is exactly what Dr. Kalra was saying, the quality and the productivity, and probably what you demonstrated is a step towards improving the productivity and also the quality. And I think that's the way forward we are going to be. Though we have overshot the time, but Kalra Sab, there are two questions, and one of them is purely a marketing question which has come. Says how much these rural influencer, YouTuber, Instagram are affecting the agriculture and allied sectors. Are companies using them for their rural market needs? So ये क्वेश्चन अगर राज साहब को एड्रेस करना होता तो आई एम श्योर वो ये कहते कि रूरल स्पेस में इन्फ्लुएंसर हमेशा से थे, एंड देयर यूज्ड टू बी पंचायत या सरपंच या एक ताऊ या एक बुजुर्ग के पास लोग हमेशा जाते थे. So I think there's nothing new. It's only probably how I see it is it's just the medium has changed. But unless and until that influencer is directly जमीन से जुड़ा हुआ नहीं होगा और उस जगह की आत्मा को नहीं समझता होगा, उस पर्टिकुलर कम्युनिटी से कनेक्टेड नहीं होगा, he probably may not be able to influence the Indian rural consumer. Kalra Sahab, your take on this?
I think it is very important, and that is why if you see the change which is happening, all the athletes, all the wrestlers, all the award winners are coming from the rural areas. You hardly find anyone coming from the urban area. And
Yeah,
gradually, once they come back to India after winning the medal, some company or the other, especially the rural ones, take them very quickly and use them. अब
true.
जैसे अगर किसी को अपना फीड मार्केट करना है, तो अगर आप कोई गांव से जुड़ा हो, कोई पहलवान है जिसने कुश्ती जीती है, तो लोग उसको एक्सेप्ट करेंगे बहुत जल्दी। और मुझे लगता है कि
Absolutely.
जो आप कह रहे हैं कि गांव में आज भी एक खुशहाल किसान, डेवलप्ड किसान या गांव का जमींदार या मुखिया, आज उसकी अपनी एक पहचान है, उसकी बात लोग आज भी मानते हैं।
आप भी मानते हैं।
तो मुझे लगता है कि ये दोनों चीज़ें इम्पोर्टेंट है। लोग इन्फ्लुएंस होते हैं, यूट्यूब भी देखते हैं, सब कुछ देखते हैं, एड्स का बहुत इन्फ्लुएंस होता है रूरल यूथ पे, और इसीलिए ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस उनको यूज़ कर रही हैं फॉर
Absolutely.
हेल्पिंग देम टू मार्केट देयर प्रोडक्ट्स।
अब नाम बदल दिया हमने, इन्फ्लुएंसर दे दिया, बट गांव में तो हमेशा सलाह लेने जाते हैं
हाँ,
बुजुर्ग।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
Absolutely. Dr. Nandeesha, there's another
सबसे बड़ा
question, but I'll
सबसे
just
बड़ा जो आज भी पुनीत, मुझे लगता है आज सबसे बड़ा जो, आज भी अगर आप कुछ सीखना चाहें तो रूरल में आपके लिए आज भी बहुत कुछ है सीखने के लिए,
बहुत कुछ है।
बहुत
Absolutely.
कुछ है सीखने के लिए।
Absolutely, sir. Dr. Nandeesha, there is another question, though you had kind of answered this in your narration, but just very quickly in 1 minute or so, if you want to add something. The question is, how do you think pandemic has changed the agriculture and allied sector in positive or negative way? Though you had explained it, but still, if you want to, 1 or 2 minutes, you just want to talk about something.
Yeah, how pandemic changed the agriculture scenario is because of the pandemic, the people could not come out of their native places, could not come to any places, go out of their homes. So this condition made the farmers to use the digital technologies, made them to use the digital apps, like as I said, the xarvio scouting app, to identify the pest and diseases, like using this through AgriFlex, e-commerce. All these things are help the farmers to take forward the agriculture to the next level. Earlier, what the farmers were doing was just go there, go to the any KVKs or go to any scientist and get the information done. But now, after pandemic days, then everything was shifted to smarter agriculture. Like as I said, everything was on a social media, and you can see many of the posts are coming in the Facebook also, Facebook and Instagram. Many will be asking the question, sir, what is the cause for this disease? We being basically from agriculture background, we used to get a lot of photographs from the farming area. Just they will be, and that too, they will be far away from us, from almost around 200 to 300 kilometers. Just they take the photographs and just they send to us. We analyze the photographs and give them the valuable suggestions, so that what measures need to be taken against that disease. Likewise, because of this pandemic, even though it was a restriction to the farmers, but it enabled our farmers to use this digital technology, so that the progression.
Absolutely.
This is how the pandemic has.
Absolutely, and one of the things which you mentioned, and I was talking to Panigrahi Saab earlier today, and he had raised a point of the shortage of labor because of various reasons, and that is where probably the digitalization or the robotic farming, though it's a far-fetched thing, but probably some of those challenges may get an innovative solution going forward. So yeah, but I think we have already majorly overrun the time, 13 minutes over this scheduled time. I think I must thank you, Dr. Kalra and Dr. Nandeesha, very much for your
Thank you.
perspective, your thoughts, and I'm sure the audience must have enjoyed this show as much as I did, interacting with both of you. Thank you very much, sir, and thank you very much, RMAI, for organizing such a beautiful program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Nonetheless,
Thank you, RMAI.
Adhar, good job. Adhar and team, good job done.
Yeah. Thank you, RMAI, for giving this kind of opportunity to interact with people and learning out of it. Thanks a lot. Thank you for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Namaskar.